Hi, beautiful souls. Welcome to my channel. If you are new, welcome. If you are coming back, welcome back. I'm so glad to have you. On this channel, we talk all things of healing, self-love, and self-care, and becoming your dream woman. And if you don't know me, my name is Cassie, and I am the founder of this page. And today I want to talk about how a breakdown can actually lead into a breakthrough for you. But a lot of times I think what happens is we kind of get lost in the process of the breakdown, right? We feel the breakdowns are pretty heavy and we tend to feel like it is for the worst case scenario of things, right? But unfortunately, well, unfortunately, but fortunately, it kind of matters on how you view it, right? The breakdown is for you to actually do a little bit of reflection, a bit of healing, a bit of work that you need to do in order to actually handle the blessing that God is trying to give you. The blessing that you actually probably prayed for at one point of time or another in your life. Because I don't know if you're aware, but we do have what they call in the spiritual world a vortex full of all of our desires and things that we've dreamed of when we were little to when we're adults. So it is filled with all of these wonderful things that we have desired throughout our life, but unfortunately we just have not been a capacity where we can hold it, right? A frequency where we can get it and love it and handle it and all of that. You know, last week I was pretty quiet on my page. I didn't post much. I was in the middle of going through a breakthrough. I was, needing to reflect and kind of go through some things in my life to figure out like, okay, what am I going to do next? And not really realizing that a breakthrough was going to come out of it, especially in the area that it did. And we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But if you are currently going through a breakthrough, just know that these breakthroughs are meant for you to be able to work through the things that you need to for God to bless you with the blessings that you have prayed for at one point in time in your life, right? So the breakthrough is not bad. It's not that you've done anything wrong. It's none of that. The breakthrough is actually just, like I said, for you to be able to come to terms and hold the blessing. Because unfortunately, if we don't do the work of healing, we don't do the work of the frequency upgrades and different things like that, then unfortunately, we will most likely self-sabotage the blessings that we pray for. And that's why they don't come when we actually want them. Because a lot of times that we are just not in a good space in order to really hold that blessing. Hence why a lot of people who win the lottery, right? They win the lottery, they get all of this abundance and they're living their life, but they weren't taught how to hold that frequency, how to hold that abundance, how to take care of that blessing. So guess what? They don't invest, especially in a smart way where they can actually, continue making money, right? They may buy this big mansion, but in the end of it, they can't upkeep that mansion because of the money, the taxes, all of that. They don't have it after the money is gone, right? So eventually the money is gone and all of the assets they have bought with that money is gone as well in some cases. Not in all, but in some. With that being said, I have been praying to God for a new place to live, right? And I prayed for it and I kind of let it go. And, there's been times where I would be driving and I would see a place. I'm like, oh, that's cute, but it really, a lot of them wasn't in school districts. So it just really wasn't aligning. I wasn't willing to change my son's school district, right? We just kind of moved here about a year ago. So, to move him out of the district again was not what I wanted to do. So I had to, kind of make sure that the new place that I was moving into was in my son's school district that we are currently in. And unfortunately, that area is not very big, right? It's kind of actually pretty small considering. I was like, okay, I will stay where I'm currently at until I find somewhere else to go. And I just kind of let it go for, a while. And then one night, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe, I was out on my prayer drive, and God had me go a different way this night. And I was like, okay, whatever, I just followed suit and just went, not thinking much of it. And so I was driving down the road, and it's not a road that I typically go down. I was driving, and the next thing you know, I look over and there's this cute house with a porch, and it had a for rent sign in the front. I was like, oh, nice, thought it was cute. And I think God was just trying to see, like, if I like it, right? If I like the area, if I like the way that the place looked from the outside, if I like the environment in general, before he would have me do anything else. Because if I didn't like it, then there wouldn't be no reason for me to go. Yep. So tell him, yep, oh, that's so cute, whatever, and I continue driving, not thinking much of it. And I go on with my life. And then a few days later, house thought came back into my spirit. I'm like, okay, I drove by a few more times during the day. And, I was like, okay, yep, that's really cute. I really like the area. There was it's kind of on a busy road, but there is some side roads nearby. So I'm like, I could even ride my bike and go for my walks on those side roads. So yeah, it definitely is doable for me and my son at this point. Still, again, not really thinking much of it, right? I was just like, yeah, talking to God like I normally do. I was like, yeah, this looks good. Pretty much moved on. And he puts it in my spirit again. And this time I pull into the driveway. I end up taking pictures of the house number and a picture of the phone number for the on the sign, to call and talk with the landlord. So I take my photos, I pull out, I drive, I go home. A little while later, I get this urge to kind of go online and take a look. So I type into the address on Google, and I get a couple hits, and some photos come up. So I view the photos. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's really cute. I could see myself here. And then the gut-wrenching sign came across that there was no pets. So I'm like, oh, okay, Lord, why are you putting this house in my spirit so much if they don't allow pets and I have a dog? So, I need my new place to be pet friendly. So I was kind of arguing with God a little bit, like, why would you, send me here or whatever? Not arguing, but just kind of like not really understanding. So I'm like, why would you do this, right? I say what I say, and then God actually put into my spirit about maybe possibly rehoming her, right? And I knew it was God doing this afterwards. I didn't know it was him during that time, to be honest. But if you are on a spiritual journey, or soon to be on one or whatnot, you'll learn that the thoughts that you think are yours really aren't yours. It's truly, a lot of it is God's thoughts that he puts into your mind for you to think, right? So I got this thought of possibly rehoming her if the place was worth it, basically. So I'm like, okay, possibly, I could call a family member and see if they would be willing to, take my dog or whatnot. Thankfully, I didn't make any phone calls or anything, but that was just a thought that I had in the back of my head. And then the day after that thought came in, I ended up calling the landlord and talking with him over the phone. He ended up asking me a few questions. And one of the questions was if I had a pet. And I was honest, and I said, yes, I do have a pet. And he's like, well, I'm not interested in any pets. Da, 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 da. I said, well, I may be willing to rehome my dog if I like the property enough. And I said, once I said that, the conversation, flipped a bit, and he was more open to talk with me. And then we ended up scheduling an appointment for me to view the apartment in just a couple days. And throughout those couple days, I was kind of thinking a lot about the process of rehoming Willow. What am I going to do? The day before, I was in the middle of working out. Now I was doing like a HIIT workout, cardio. It was intense. I'm like, doing jumping jacks, jumping around. And next thing you know, and I'm in tears over the fact that I don't want to rehome my dog. I've had her for 8 years. I would be a terrible person to do this, and this and that. So I'm breaking down in the middle of my HIIT workout and, fun, right? And then I tell God, that I don't want to rehome her. I just don't feel comfortable doing it. So, I'll just stay here until another place hopefully opens up where I can, have my dog. And whatever he did, I don't know exactly what he did, but still had an urge to go look at the property. Even with that thought process, I was like, I still had the urge to go and look at the property. So that next day came, and I went and seen the property. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cute. Walking around the place, checking everything out. The landlord was chatting with me, kind of letting me know a little bit of the history about the place and the neighborhood and things like that. And then we started also talking about real estate and Italy and just life and just, a bunch of different things. And I was like, wow, this actually is flowing very good. The conversation is going well. Everything seems lining with this place being a good place. Basically, the vibes were good. So, we go, he shows me in the basement, and then we walk out the side door onto the unit side of the driveway that I was looking at, because there's two different units. There's a front unit and a back unit, and each unit has their own driveway. And so we go out the side door for the front unit that I would be in if I would move into this place. And there's a big window of the back unit right there as I'm walking out, looking out to the backyard, because it is like a shared backyard. And don't you know, guess what I see? I see a dog barking in the window. And he kind of chuckles. He's like, oh yeah, she's a big baby, he. So I was like, okay. Was a great sign, because that means that he's not really closed off to dogs, right? So he just, earlier in our conversation, he did kind of, say a few comments to me that let me know that the previous tenant wasn't the most cleansiest person I got. I think maybe they had a pet, and it was just kind of not a great situation where he wanted to do that again. I didn't say anything at that point. I kept quiet. Like, okay, this is definitely God's hands at work. This is him doing what God does. So I'm just going to go with the flow and let God do what he's going to do in this process. So we chat and a little bit more outside, and we go back in, and I say, okay, I will take an application, and I will go home and think about it, and I'll let you know. So I take my application, I go home, I look through the application. It's pretty simple application. And on the bottom of the first page, there was an area that requested like pet information, right? I'm like, okay, this is actually really good, because if they didn't have pet information, I wouldn't know really how to incorporate this whole pet thing, right? I put my pet information down, and I even give a little bit more detail than they were even asking, just to kind of let them know that I wasn't bringing a puppy in or anything like that, because my dog's 8 years old, house trained, and she just loves cuddles and to lay on her bed. She's a lazy girl. I put a little detail in there. I fill out the application, and then the next day I go and submit the application. I pay my fee, and I go, okay, God, I pray to God, say, okay, You'd work your magic because this is all on you. Right? And the day after I submitted the application, I ended up getting a text back from the landlord that stated like, okay, your application looks really good, but unfortunately, we're not really willing to take the dog. And thankfully, I'm not in a position where I have to move, right? I want to move, but I don't have to move. So it wasn't a dire need for me to be able to leave. And he knew that because he asked like what my situation was the day before or a couple days prior when I went and looked at the property. I just said, I'm looking for something a little bit more private than I'm currently at because I'm in a townhouse right now in a complex and there's just people everywhere. And he's like, okay, cool. And so he texts me that, and then I text back and say, unfortunately, after me thinking about it, I explained to him about my little breakdown and how it just didn't settle right in my soul to really, rehome my dog and things like that. If he did end up having a change of heart on the dog situation, to please let me know because I would love to, move into the property. And I wished him a happy Thanksgiving because it was like the day before Thanksgiving that all this was like happening, and told him to have a great day. Okay, again, God, this is you, And I went out that night on another prayer ride and I talked to him. I drove by the property again and, I just said, okay, work your magic. You sent me here, so you know what's going on more than me. And then the next day on Thanksgiving, I actually, he texted me back and he was like, happy Thanksgiving. Sorry to bother you, yada, yada, yada. But I am willing to reconsider my position on having the dog. And I was like, oh, yes, thank you, Lord, for working this out for me. It just all fell into place like I was hoping it would, but I really wasn't positive, right? Like I'm trying to have faith in the process, but I'm also pretty nervous too because he kind of had like a pretty solid stance on that no dog thing. And so, I'm like, okay, wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you very much. You won't regret your decision. And can we, meet up to basically sign papers and stuff like that, because I requested to move in December 1st. I have to give my place a bit of a notice to get out, and I just wanted to be able to move out a little bit slower pace and not have to be like out in a day. And so I'm doing it this way, saying, okay, I can move in December 1st, and then giving this place that I'm currently in a little bit of notice. It gives me about 20 days to kind of get out of here. I met him on Saturday, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, signed my new lease, paid my deposit and all of that. Now, I am getting ready to move, and in the middle of holiday season, in the middle of winter here, because I'm in northeastern area. So we are in the middle of winter. We're in fall, but it's still, there's snow out there today, and it's snowed a few times already. You know what? This was the timing that aligned for this blessing. So I am very grateful for this blessing, and I'm grateful for that breakthrough or that breakdown in order to be able to get to this breakthrough, right? So the breakdown was, I had to really decide, do I want to move? What do I want? Asking for something, but how is this going to really go when you have the opportunity to really say yes to the thing that you prayed for? Are you going to say no because it's a little too much work? Or are you going to say yes because it's something that you want? I've, gone through some tough seasons in my life, and those tough seasons has, basically equipped me to be able to do things like this, right? Where now I'm packing and moving my whole family, from one place to another by myself, basically in the next 20 days. And, it's okay, because I can do tough things, and I will definitely get through this as well as the other things that I've gotten through. And I know that God is going to support me in this process and help me out as much as, he possibly can by giving me the strength, the ambition, and everything that I need in order to really make this happen. I hope that this was helpful for you. And if you are in the middle of a breakdown, just know, like I said, it's not anything bad. Also, this was a great reminder because sometimes, in our human life, like you kind of forget things a little bit, or you let the ego mind kind of take over and you get a little nervous and you're like, oh, oh, oh. And that's kind of where I was a little bit. I was a little nervous in this process of how things were going to turn out. But, as God has said, He goes ahead of you to clear the path, to make sure that everything is going to work out for you in your favor before He sends you. So just remember that breakthrough, that delay, the break, I don't know why I keep saying breakthrough, but the breakdown, that delay, that everything that, may be happening right now in your life is all because God is still working things out, and it can't happen right at this moment. So when I prayed to move a few months ago, it wasn't the correct time for all of that. But now, it's been a work in process, and God worked it out in the spiritual realm before it could work out in the 3D realm. And then He made it all happen, and I am getting ready to move, and it's just been wonderful. It's a great blessing, and I am so glad that I had faith in the process of trusting that this was going to work out, right? Because that's why I was like, okay, God, if it's meant for me, you will make it happen, right? Because everything is always working out for me. And that's kind of what you have to continue telling yourself. Everything is working out for me in the best way possible. And as long as you keep saying that, that's what God is going to show you. But if you keep, if you say, oh man, my life sucks, or this is crappy, or whatever, that's what God's going to show you too, because you get what you think of, not what you want. So make sure that your thoughts are positive and going towards what you want and not holding you back. He's guiding you to do something. Go for it, do it, and know that God can move things fast. I mean, this all happened within like 4 days, right? Of me going to look at the place, signing the lease, paying the deposit, and now I'm moving. It happened within a week's timeline, and maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks, even, without me even really kind of knowing that I would be moving, because I was looking at the place. God was, making sure that I actually liked the property before He sent me along the way, which I think He knew that I was going to like it, but He had to just, make sure that, yeah, okay, that I can see myself here. You may be feeling tired. You may be feeling scared. You may be feeling like unsure of the situation, but just know that your breakdown may just be that doorway to your breakthrough. So follow those pulls that God is sending you. If you get the hunch to take a different way, on your ride or whatnot, to take that different route, right? Do whatever you are feeling pulled in your heart to do. Follow God even when it doesn't make sense to you, because our brains are meant to keep us safe and keep us from going outside of our comfort zone, right? So a lot of times we'll be like, no, we can't do that because it's different. It takes us out of our comfort zone. And so our mind is trying to say, keep us safe by doing the same thing, not realizing that these different opportunities can be really great for us as well. Prepared the path for you. Just follow that pull and go and pray and just have really good faith and belief in that, in the best case scenario for you. So I love you, and I'm so glad that you watched this, and I hope that this resonated with you. Talk to you later. Bye.